On this panel session on how to accelerate and intensify circularity in water consumption, my name is Naomi. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a director of H2O People and the European Junior Water Program. There's also a group of participants of the European Junior Water Program here with us today. And Dimitris is also one of the participants, and Loic, a former one. So we are trying to create a new thriving community of young professionals that can work together all around Europe on water issues for the next, decades to come. And today we're going to talk about circularity in water. And that all has to do with how we collaborate together and how we connect. And before I'm going not to introduce you, because you can perfectly introduce yourself, but I want to ask you to do that by answering a question one by one to get a bit of an idea what circularity is, because it's a buzzword, but what are we talking about and why is it important? Loic, can I ask you that question?
So thank you, Naomi. I'm Loic Charpentier. I'm working for Water Europe. So it's the European Association of the Innovative Water Sector. We are based in Brussels and we are dealing with European institutions. And in my daily job, in fact, circular water is really important because we are pushing for what we call the water smart society. It means a society where we recognize and realize the value of water, we exploit the value in water, meaning nutrients, substances, energy, and data. We are also pushing for the digitalization of the whole value chain of the water sectors, and also to develop hybrid green-gray infrastructure. And for her, circular economy is part of the value of water and the value in water, in terms of cascading water, reuse water, water conservations, and diversification of the sources.
Thank you. You're originally from the area of Bordeaux, but expressing now a European perspective. And from that European perspective, we would like to hear a bit more about the French perspective. How are they looking into circular water? And what do you see?
Okay, I'm Jeannie Ber. I'm administrator of Green Cross France and Territories, and it's an NGO which is working on the French territory in a large way, because we have all the Pacific territories and Western Indies and all our former colonies. And we are administrators of the Partenariat Français pour l'eau, which is a large organization including NGOs and companies and government organizations. Circularity, in fact, we have the large cycle of water, so it's from the rain to the sea, and to the sea to the rain. So that's the first step. We have that. We see that we have a very important work on the large cycle of water on the PFE, on the Partenariat Français pour l'eau, as well at INERIS, which is a national institute dealing with industrial risks and scientific risks. And so we monitor and work on monitoring the large cycle of water. So it, in terms of substances and impact of human activities. And I am very involved in that field, from substances to practices in general, and watching on this field from an NGO point of view, and so the side of the society.
Good, and that's what we want to create as well, a society that accelerates and creates some action. Our third panelist is Dimitris from Greece, a completely different perspective as well. Is your mic working?
No, I don't.
Yes,
Yes.
It does. Perfect. Dimitris, how did you end up here in Bordeaux speaking about circular water? And what do you think are the main drivers and barriers to accelerate this circular water idea?
I am a researcher in University of Thessaly. I'm a PhD on urban water systems, and also a lecturer. Circularity and water reuse and reclamation is one of the subjects also I've been teaching in the class. So firstly I've realized is that we are talking about a mentality shift, and we have to move from linear economy to circular economy. And even the technology is there, because we now can take wastewater from any quality and turn it to water to any wanted quality. So the knowledge is there, or most of the knowledge we need. The mentality is not there yet. And talking about the barriers, of course there are still technical barriers, especially in Europe. So we're talking about aging cities, aged cities, and if we are talking about the small scales of circularity within a building or within a block of buildings, this is not easy to create double distribution systems. But in a wider scale of a region, this could happen, but then we have other barriers. The logistics need to be developed, need to be analyzed, because you might have the water to be used where and when you do not need it. So there is all this matter of economy, of space and time. But I would think that most important barriers would be social acceptance, which comes together with health issues. So technology also might help there. I mean, good early warning systems, development in pollutants to be traced, like heavy metals are not traced easily yet. And a third barrier, I would say, would be, and this could also become a driver in parallel, lack of a holistic view. So, for example, a lot needs to be done in nexus-wise, linking.
What is Nexus?
Nexus is this interlinked web of resources. So we need to co-design, taking into account not only water, but energy systems, food security, ecosystems, and now more components enter the nexus field. So health is also there. So taking into account that water, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, is not that expensive, we might find that incentives are that you also save other most expensive natural sources. So there might be an indirect incentive there. If you realize how much energy you save by reusing water, here you have a solution, and all this needs to be revealed. Or circularity in data also. Wastewater treatment have all this wealth of data. It is a mirror of the society. So there might be some drivers.
Good. Do you see the same drivers and barriers in France as what Dimitris was describing, Jeannie?
I think in France, first of all, we have one technical barrier in that field. We have very, very large sewage system infrastructures. The variety of substances that will transit through these systems makes it extremely difficult to monitor and to know exactly what you will recycle or not when you will draw water from these systems. The notion of holistic in terms of water recycling and the kind of the environment, in fact, it will much depend on the size of the sewage system, the water treatment systems. If it is a domestic system, you will more or less know what you inject in the system. If it is a public system, you will have thousands of different substances which will be difficult to qualify, which will be difficult to quantify in real time, so that you will never exactly know what you release in the nature or what you release in new uses. And that's one very important focus in France and at the university in particular, because that's where we identify and when the different actors of the system, enterprises, companies, in the water, field of water, civil society, as I'm from, are advised and informed of that. And so we have a very deep reflection about that. We have short regulations in terms of substances. In fact, we just have REACH, the European regulation. We have the pharmaceuticals regulations, but that's not regulated in the water treatment system. So we don't know what we treat actually, and we don't know what is our world and what we can do and what is the consequences of recycling water. So we are trying to identify that at the moment. Just one short story. We had in Montpellier, in the sewage system, one day in one of the tanks of the sewage station, the main sewage station, the equivalent of 100,000 pills of ecstasy in the system that have been released directly in the sea. Well, we are not very happy for the fishes or for the water or for the coastal environmental system. But if it had been released somewhere on the ground, and we don't know what could be the prejudice for the population if it had been released somewhere else inland.
A very happy population, maybe. Yep. Do you think that on a European framework, Loïc, there are different drivers and barriers, or what would you say the main drivers and barriers are from a European perspective?
So at the European level, when we speak about circular economy, we just 2 years ago revised the legislation, the regulation for reuse water for irrigation purposes, but we stop here. So legally, we cannot go further, normally. It depends on the national level in that case. So now we are in the process to revise the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive and the Industrial Emission Directive. For they are really key in terms of circularity, and the main question that we have right now for the European water sector is how we can define and translate circularity for the water sector in legal terms. And we have different projects I'm working right now with more or less 15 projects related to water, and one is NextGens, I already mentioned this morning. But it's a European project where they have 10 demo cases and working on circularity in different urban areas, like in Greece, in Athens, but you have also in Spain, Sweden. And the objective is really to demonstrate different local situations on how it can work. And one action also that they have run by the one university based in the UK, it's to assess the social acceptance of reusing water for people. And in that case, we do not see the barrier. People are okay with that. And for us, it's a good news because it means that we can move 2-3 steps further, especially with the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, for pushing of reuse. Of course, saving water, it's always good. But for the rest, if we can reuse it, it could be great.
Yeah. I heard no demo case in France? Or can they see somewhere?
I do not remember. I'm sorry, I messed up.
That's too bad. So we talked about the main different barriers and drivers, and on the one hand we had the technical and the knowledge barriers that we need to find each other and the different sectors and the different technology fields, ways of thinking. They need to find each other. And on the other hand, that was that social and human aspect, the mindset that was mentioned, but also the citizens. So I want to look further and deeper a bit into those two topics. And first, if we go to the technical and knowledge transfer, what would you say, because we talked, I asked for barriers and drivers, but most people are more fond of barriers and know them better. So let's look at the positive side now. What would you say are the best practices towards knowledge transfer and creation of maybe new knowledge, new techniques?
What we observe in France is that there is a very large ecosystem now of young companies. We have historically in France very large and very big specialists in the water treatment and water distribution and production field, and some of the largest in the world due to our history and from the 18th century now. And since a few years, we have seen a very strong ecosystem of new companies, startups working on that field, particularly in the circular field. I've met some of these guys, and they are, in fact, considering locations or a city or a house or a farm like an oasis. And you have to do everything on site, keep the water as much as you can keep it. And it's very much the philosophy I've heard and I've seen discussing with these startups, these younger companies, which is brand new. They are extremely welcome in the different water organizations in France, and the technology comes from everywhere. In fact, I've been involved on my side on a big Bitcoin project just for qualifying and keeping tracing the incidents, pollution incidents in the water, for instance, recently. And there is a lot of cross-fertilization between different disciplines at the moment in the French system. So there's plenty of hope to trying to finding very good solutions in that regard.
And Dimitris, what do you think is the most hopeful technical development, what you've seen in the projects, your students? What's your highlight?
Not sure that this would be technical, though, because I mostly believe in transfer knowledge, in co-creation, reinforcement, in horizontal and vertical. Horizontal, like the really nice job done in EJWP, this kind of transdisciplinarity, for example, or vertical, good top-down dissemination of the benefits. So technical will always be there, and technology providers will always do their job, and I have to ask that they will find solutions for everything. The other part is the hard, I believe, the social aspect.
Yeah, but so the technical and the knowledge providers are the highlights maybe at this, they're way ahead of all of us.
Probably.
Probably, yeah. Loïc, what would you say is your best practice and your hope in these, well, not so fast of transformation that we're seeing at the moment?
If I speak about good practices, the first one is, I think inside the European institution you have the exchange of practices between the member states. And this type of exchange of information is really important because we can learn from each other, and it's a collective exercise, and it's really needed. So on nature-based solution in recycling water or different technology for energy recovering and so on.
Yeah. I have one question in between. You called nature-based solutions.
Yes.
What's so special about nature-based solutions?
It's if I can say in French, it's linked to biomimétisme, but it's easier in that way. But it's to take inspiration from the nature and to copy a little bit what they are doing and to learn from natures. And that allow us after to develop some hybrid gray-green infrastructures that bring back nature, for example, in our cities. And we have, for example, good example in the north of Europe, like Copenhagen or the Netherlands. But it's also useful in terms of industrial processes. So to control the risk of pollutions, and in terms of diffuse pollution also, it might be really useful. And a good and a very important exercise that we will need to do in the coming months is to really start to think about circular processes as water, where water is only a vector inside the process. And to see how we can use water to produce, but to release water at the right quality and the right quantity, and reduce the quantity of water that we will keep in the process. And for that, of course, you have the expert group, but it's not the member state who can work on that. The driver will be the legislation first. For us with the directive, because we canvass all the framework for the national translations. And after, it's also the project to demonstrate and deploy the technology. For example, Zero Brine, it's a project working on brine management, so salt water in the industrial sectors. They reached a nice target. They are able to recycle 100% of the brine from one demo case. So that type of technology and knowledge need to be transferred, and the skills also. So we really need to create a network between the different countries.
You're really good in making bridges. You stole my bridge from skills, because we need skills to create such a circular system, and humans as well to get involved and engaged. And that might be something for you as well, to give a bit of view on how engaged are citizens in this circular water. And yeah, maybe that one first. Are they interested?
Yeah. Thanks very much for asking me, for putting this question, because I was thinking about, in fact, it's more involvement than acceptance, in fact, because I think that everybody will find it very interesting to be able to reuse the water and to make a better use of water and definite use of water. In fact, the problem is what we will leave in the water with our activity. And so this needs involvement. It's not acceptance. We'll have to have new systems to operate, which will be a bit more complicating than simply turning the tap. So it will be a bit more complicated to operate. Probably, in the end, less expensive than what we do today, because today we have to tax, we have to leverage tax, and we have to leverage of kind of money just to pour quantities, huge quantities and unreasonable quantities of water in the sewage system. But the most difficult will probably be the involvement than the acceptance, the involvement in not dropping anything in the water. Just let the water take away the problems. We have the water that take away the bottles in the rivers, the microplastics, which is a major problem today, and all kind of substances which can be dissolved in the water, not simply particles, but just chemicals. And so the involvement will be in getting engaged in not putting anything in the water, not dropping there anything, so that we have a limited number of substances, limited number of pollutions to deal with, so that we can reuse safely water and at a reasonable cost. And it's more involvement than acceptance, I believe.
Yeah, so it's also about learning and education?
Of course, definitely.
Yeah.
And but we are very late in our education to environment in general, so it has to be taught. The price, not the business price of water, but the price of water has to be taught to our children. It's obvious, it's so precious that we have to teach it to our children and to teach them how to preserve it and how to keep as much of pollution as possible away from the water.
Yeah, and probably not only then to children, because the older generations need also to be aware what not to put into the water.
Yeah, that was, as we were saying before we came here, we parents the parents have plenty to learn from the children. Sometimes it's easier to get the parents educated through the children.
And with looking at educating parents to children, you're teaching students, Dimitris. What do you see with their engagement into this topic?
I see a kind of paradox. I can't see yet what I was expected to see, like a new mentality. I'm a little discouraged in this level. I thought that there I would go in a class and see students already having this circular mentality. And I see that in educational programs, circular mentality is not yet disseminated as it should. So I don't think we're there yet in educational perspective.
So there's work to do. Does Water Europe, does anyone anything to also to help to share that knowledge alongside member states or members?
Yes, so in Water Europe, we have 20 working groups to exchange information and try to create consortium to reply to the public calls for research and innovations. So that is one way to exchange between 250 members across 27 countries right now. But the second one also is when we are working with the MEPs, so member of the European Parliament, other associations, or also with the commissions and the member states. In that case, we have one principle that we call P4P. It's project for policy. And the idea is really to extract from the project that the European Commissions and the European institutions are financing some lessons that we can summarize for the whole continent and try to translate in the next legislations. So for example, on the Wayfair Nexus, like you were mentioning, we have different projects, and the research agencies of the European Union are using that also to justify the political choice that they will do, or they will write in the new legislations. So this aspect is really important, to have the information from the ground. And also a more vertical exchange of information for the European institutions. It's really to reply to the public consultation. They open up consultation each time they want to revise the legislation, and it's open in 23 languages. And we have the possibility to reply to this consultation and bring this type of information. For example, on the Bathing Water Directive, we had the public consultations, and one question here is how we can use nature-based solutions and recycle a part of the water. And when we check the data here, 40 to 45% of the reply are Irish citizens. So that is also a good news, because it means that in Ireland, the question of bathing water is really important.
Yeah. So, and just anyone can just fill in those public consultations? So anyone from Europe can fill them in?
Yeah, you just need to Google it.
Yeah, just need to Google and you can let yourself hear. And that also brings me to something, because we can say that the European Commission needs to do something, or the educational field needs to do something. But we might also need to do something ourselves to accelerate this circular water system. And maybe also something for everyone in the room to think about. What can we do? And not only we, but what can I do? Loic, what will you do next week to accelerate and help this circular theme?
My job and work on Water Innovation Europe in June, because that is, we will speak about circular economy and industrial reuse. And normally we will invite a lot of policymakers, and really the objective is to have a brainstorm and to see how we can define these terms and concepts, and also how we can translate that into new legislations.
Okay, Dimitris, what will you do next week?
Research-wise, I think that I'm happy to say that now there is always integration of co-creation processes in research. So we don't have fragmented, isolated research in a laboratory. We have even living labs. We have case studies with co-creation processes with stakeholders, involvement, and this, I think, is a good contribution to the involvement, and knowledge transfer.
Good. Jeannie, what will you do next week?
I would teach. I would try to create a teaching program for that. Maybe starting from cigarette butts, which is a very tough subject in terms of water, because one cigarette butt, it's about 500 liters, half a cubic meter spoiled, and it's extremely complicated because there are plenty and many tens or hundreds of different substances, and it's very good thing for education and water education. See how much it is purchased, how much with little you can do very big harm. And so try to find a topic like this one, and just draw the line and bring people to engage in that, starting from something small like a cigarette butt.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really hopeful, because we started this talk with this big thing, circular water, and what is it, and that we all need to work for it to make it work in the future. But then at the end, well, we said we need a society, and that's all our individual actions together. I'm very gladful that you will all do something next week, and I would encourage you to also pick something to do next week, and I will check up on you to make sure it does happen. With that said, we agreed that creating and accelerate circular water, technically we're quite far. The reuse of water, what water are we not reusing? We only have one water and one circular loop. And we also agreed that the water doesn't stop at borders, so we should also crossing those borders and learn from and with each other. And I would say the final conclusion, is also that we need to find each other in ways of working, in connecting, in educating each other, and not only the children, but also to create real actions. And I think that's a perfect conclusion to this session. We have 2 minutes on the clock, but I'm looking at our moderator of this session. I think we had a perfect conclusion.